So you've got all these things. Mental health before the pandemic wasn't that great. Like the statistics were already trending in a not so great direction. Pandemic hits and it gets worse.
And I think we're still dealing with the hangover of that. I think that's really, I mean, that's kind of, as you're expressing that, those statements, like we're still in the hangover of it. Still frustrated by the last 3 years and what it's meant and what it's done. I mean, they've studied it, right? It's been proven that it was one of the worst things for our mental health, right? Like you said, it was already bad, and now it just drove it right into the ground head first. So we have to all take it upon ourselves to take control of those items that we can and pull the nose up, man. It's time to get moving here. It's time to drag ourselves out of this loneliness, out of this dark place.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Grit Meets Growth podcast, where we bring you inspiration and insights focused on getting uncomfortable, making things happen, and creating a magnetic life. If you enjoy the messages you're hearing here, please leave us a review on whatever platform you're listening on, and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on future episodes of the podcast. With that, let's get after it.
You had a fantastic topic to talk about today, and I'm excited to get into.
Yeah?
Absolutely.
What was that? I'm just kidding. Yeah, well, I think the timing for the conversation is right. May is Mental Health Awareness Month. I just wrote a blog on how we deal with that in the security space and mental health, and it's a lot of conversation on that front. But in all of my conversations with folks, it seems like we're all having some struggles when it comes to mental health. I know I am. And it's been a couple of months that I've been kind of battling through that. And I just keep trying to put one foot in front of the other. But I really like to share some of the things that I'm doing, right? Some of the challenges that I'm hearing out there. Let's have a conversation about what we're doing, because I think you're kind of dealing with some of it as well.
Not only am I dealing with some of it, but I would say every conversation we have, like we're working with teams, and you're pulling mental health into the security side of the world. From the marketing side of the world, as we're working with teams, mental health and like burnout is a conversation that comes up all the time. Like, and there's a lot of people that are burnt out. They're burnt out at work. They're burnt out in their relationships. They're just burnt out. They feel like they're burnt out. And it's an important conversation to have, and it gets talked about some, but not enough. So I'm excited for this.
Yeah, I think, and that burnout is for real. I mean, that's much of what I'm hearing, in our space as well. It's the same thing. There have been situations over the last couple of months where I'm there, but I'm not mentally, right? I'm in my workout, but I'm not really there mentally. Like I'm not connected to it somehow. And that's been a real challenge for me. So yeah, there are a number of things highlights that have come out of my conversations lately, and that people are struggling with, right? There's this whole thing around uncertainty, right? We're living in a world where uncertainty is top, right? Uncertainty about the economy, uncertainty about, prices of things, whatever, right? So there's this level of uncertainty. There's a lot of talk about and struggle with physical health. There are a lot of people struggling with physical health. There are a lot of people struggling with their mental health. There are a lot of people struggling with relationships, whether that is, with their spouse, with their children, with their friends, with their coworkers. And then there's this big thing looming around job security, and are jobs going to be secure, and what's happening? I mean, you've been part of it. I've been part of it. This whole fractional conversation that's going on out in the marketplace, that's driven by people's frustration, if you will, or concern around job security. So I think we've got some pieces that we can kind of talk about as we discuss those kind of 5 broad categories.
I think those 5 categories nail it. I think I would agree with exactly what you're saying. If you take the things that are rising up in conversations where people are struggling right now, those are the 5 areas that they are struggling. And the interesting thing is they're so interwoven. It's like a web. You pull one string, all the other strings go with it. These are common struggles that people have right now. And it's good to put a voice to them and not be in a situation where we can't. Because I think that's been common for a long time. We can't talk about the things we're struggling with because we don't want to look weak. And I think weakness is not talking. I think strength comes in talking about and unpacking some of these things. So yeah, let's dig into the first one.
Uncertainty. Yeah, I mean, I can relate. And frankly, if we're watching the news, if we're looking through social media, yeah, there certainly is a level of uncertainty. I feel it every day. Like, who knows? Like, what's going to happen? Where are we headed? What's going on? A lot of uncertainty that exists there. But guess what? We can control that. We can shut the TV off. We can change our purview on social media, right? Focus on different stuff, focus on different people. We have that opportunity to be able to do that in social media. We don't have to just look at the stuff that's driven to us every day. It's the easy thing to do, but we don't have to, right? We can separate ourselves from that. So there are things in that uncertainty area, that we can do. We've talked a lot about, we don't have to see the entire staircase. We just have to see the first step. Take that first step. Take that step. When you're feeling anxious and uncertain about things, take the step. Keep moving. Movement helps solve that, right? Go to the gym. If you're working from home, and this ties right into mental health as well, get dressed up. Dress for your day. Don't sit in your comfy clothes just because you're working from home. Dress like you would be going to the office. Dress to the nines. Overdress. Change your location. Maybe shift your desk. It's getting nicer out here in Minnesota. Get that view of the sunshine when and if it ever comes out. Spend some time in your environment and changing up your environment. Thoughts on that?
Well, it's interesting as you talk about the fact that it's getting nice in Minnesota, and I know you've got a motorcycle trip coming up. One of the things that rises up in there for me is in Minnesota in the winter, you're in your car and you've got the top on your car and you've got the doors on your car and you're like staring out the windshield, right? You get on a bike and the perspective completely changes. You see everything. I'm assuming, because I don't ride motorcycles, but I'm assuming your perspective of the whole world, the doors fall off, the ceiling comes off, you see everything. Changing that perspective, I feel like, is a game changer. And I think we get stuck sometimes in this box, like you're in the car, right? I have a question for you regarding watching the news, because I hear this all the time. Like, well, yeah, I don't want to watch the news because it's negative. It makes me feel crappy, but I don't want to stick my head in the ground and not know what's going on. How do you play that out? Because I'm in the exact same boat you are. I can't stand watching the news anymore. And I can probably tell you before we even turn the news on what the stories are going to be. I got a pretty good idea.
Yeah.
So how do you balance that?
I haven't watched the news in years.
how do you know what's going on?
John, we've got enough of it fed to us every day, right? I mean, I spend the majority of my day at a desk, as do you, right? We're in front of our computer. It doesn't really take much no matter where you go, right? You may be on social and posting social posts for, for work or for your business. There's information out there, right? You know what's going on. We don't have to be connected to the television at 6 o'clock to get our news like we used to. And quite frankly, in my opinion, there's not a lot of good stuff that's on there anyway.
Well, it's geared.
So much of the news today is about dividing us as people, right? And I think that drives right to our uncertainty. Like, we're social creatures. Humans are social people. We need to be in those social environments. There's a lot of conversation about that too, right? Depression and anxiety driven from lack of connection with people. We're working from home now. Many people are anyway. So you may have your roommates or your spouse and your kids, and maybe a couple of neighbors that you see on a daily, but who else are you interacting with? If you're working from home, I challenge you, get out, talk with people, go be in a room, as some of our friends say, go be in a room with more than 10 people once a week. Make that your mission. It will help with the way you're feeling. For me, it helps immensely. That's like those are fill your bucket moments for me. Like, I come from those networking type events, and just having conversation with other people, feeling energized.
I was at a conference yesterday with 300 people, and it was energizing. It was energizing to hear the room, to hear the conversations, to be in the conversations. It was energizing to be around real live human people. And there was just a story that passed by the other day, and I haven't dug into it, so I'm not going to speak to it a whole lot, but it talked about there being a loneliness epidemic in the United States. And without knowing the story, it's not shocking to hear that.
Right.
It's not shocking to hear that people are lonely right now, because I felt it. I felt it a lot. And that's where, like, a day like yesterday, being around people feels a little less lonely. And that's not to say that my family doesn't make me feel unlonely. But
right.
We need people in our circle. We need sometimes to broaden our circle, to have conversations with people we're not around all the time, with people that are different than us, that challenge us, that are going to ask good questions. That helps battle against the loneliness. And the loneliness is tied to mental health all day long.
Absolutely. Well, and so other ideas on that front, right? You talked about joining a community, attending conferences, volunteering. Go find something that you can volunteer at for a cause that you feel strong about with other like-minded people. And give, right? Giving is a way to break out of that mental darkness as well, in my opinion. Give your time, give your thoughts, give your energy.
When we put the focus on what can I bring to the table versus what am I going to get, that changes a lot of things. When we focus on what we can give, what we can share, the value that we have to add to the people that we come into contact with, I think we're trained, especially if you and I have both had sales jobs. We both do right now. Like, sales is a big part of what we do. It's really easy to make that very transactional, and to see people with dollar signs over their heads and what can they give me, when our approach is what can I bring that person? How can I add value?
Yep.
The rest falls into place. And things get better. Things get better from a mental health perspective when you find opportunities to give and to share. Even when you don't feel like it and feel like you don't have anything to share, when you force yourself into that, things get better.
Yeah. Well, we're in the consulting business, right? We always say consulting starts with the first conversation, right? And keeping that context of always consulting versus selling, it's a whole different mental ballgame. I had to be reminded of that a couple weeks ago. My own words turned back on me. And it was a turning point for me mentally. Sometimes we have to hear our own words back.
Yeah. And sometimes it takes somebody else in our circle to drop those words in our lap and say, hey, you said this. What does that look like to you today? Which you have to be open to being challenged. And some days it sucks. Some days it's a slap in the face.
It's hard. You just have to remember where it's coming from, right? I mean, it does end up being about context. But getting back to those 5 areas, right? Uncertainty, physical health, mental health, relationships, job security. Of those things, many we have direct control over. And the other 2, we still have some control in. Right? Uncertainty, we can't control all of that, but we can control how we react to it. Our physical health and what's going on, we have direct control over that. We have direct control over what goes in our mouth every day. We have direct control on what we do for physical activity. And it doesn't always have to be this big thing. It's just about consistency.
I think the physical health one too, it's easy to get stuck in the weeds on that and make it about, like you said, big things. Like I have to go to the gym. I have to do it for an hour. I have to lift weights, like whatever. Figure out what your deal is. It's summertime now. It's getting nicer out. The sun's out. Go for a freaking walk.
Right.
Like it doesn't have to be hard. If you're going to have lunch, pick the salad over the burger. Like make some of those decisions where you hold yourself a little bit accountable and you do something that invests in yourself and invests in being good to yourself and is good for you. Because that's the other piece of this. The physical activity and it's tied to the mental health. They're like directly tied together. You can't separate them.
Right. And guess what? The physical side of things, especially in the summer here in Minnesota, like you said, get outside, weed your garden, right? Edge your flower beds, cut your own lawn instead of hiring it out, right? I mean, there are all of these things that we can influence and working out and going to the gym is a substitute for the hard work that we've always done. Find some hard work. It will be more rewarding in many cases, right? Beautify your space, your house, whatever. So yeah, those are, it doesn't have to be a massive change in order to see massive change. It can be small changes over the course of a period of time.
And a lot of those things are things you can do with other people. Like the yard work. Get your kids or your spouse in there with you. I've helped my neighbor on yard work before, or he's come over and helped me before on projects I was doing. Go for a walk. Grab a friend. Go meet a friend and go for a walk. You don't have to do it by yourself. And now all of a sudden you're filling that social bucket, which is a massively important bucket when it comes to mental health. Figure out ways to put those things together. I've got a good friend, Paul Botts at Good Leadership. He talks about figure out ways to blend. Take the parts of your life and blend them together. I want to blend my relationships with my friends, and I want to blend that with fun and fitness. He has the 7 F's. If you can start to blend areas of your life where you connect the dots between things and you're not doing them by themselves, but you're connecting them, there's a lot of value in that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
What's number 3?
Mental health, which is really, I think, all encompassing. Like all of these things really relate to mental health, right? it's probably in the middle of that list for a reason, because it is the center of it all. But all of these activities, whether it's physical, whether it's, getting out and talking with people, those are all ways that we can deal with that mental health. Upping your intake of vitamin D can help with your mental health. The physical fitness, going to the gym, going for a walk, volunteering, all can help with your mental health. Getting out of the house, changing your environment can all help with mental health. It's at the core of the discussion today. It's at the core of it's on people's minds, right? Mental health is a big thing. We're hearing it in many cases. And while I'm dealing with it myself, I'm also frustrated by that. Like, why does it have to be an issue? Right? Why are so many of us dealing with poor mental health right now? That's the frustrating part.
I think it goes back to the way that you kind of centered it up is you've got all these things around it. The uncertainty, some of our physical challenges, some of the work challenges, all of those things, relationship challenges that all feed into it. And then you layer in social media and comparison. I mean, I think social media has created a comparison culture that we've all been part of. And anybody who says that maybe you're listening to this and you're like, I've never been on Facebook or Instagram, which is fantastic. But for anybody who has spent any time on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok or wherever, LinkedIn even, you've been hit by comparison. Why don't I have what that person has? Why am I not where they're at? Why is my career not as far along as what I wanted it to be? Why am I experiencing this challenge and they're not? And I think social has created that comparison culture. Like, I've got twin 17-year-olds. Like, as much as I look at them and I'm like, oh, it's terrible for them, they deal with this at a level that I never had to, I still deal with it. I spend 5 minutes on Facebook and comparison kicks in, or LinkedIn for that matter, and my wheels are turning, and it doesn't make me feel better about myself. In many cases, I end up feeling worse about my situation than better. And that's not because I'm not cheering people on the outside. I'm happy for everybody who's having an awesome experience. But comparison seeps in. And if you're telling yourself, I don't ever compare, I'm sorry, you're lying to yourself. We all do it, right? So you've got social media that adds a layer of pressure. And then we're coming out of this pandemic, and we're out of it. And we can argue whether we're out of it or not out of it or still in it or whatever, wherever you want to take that conversation. But 3 years ago, we were in the middle of a pandemic that sucked. And we didn't get to leave our house. We didn't get to go to see people. The social interaction dried up. The meetings and the happy hours and all those opportunities to see people got weird. The way we do meetings got weird. Everything, the way we work got weird. Like, okay, now we're all going to work from our kitchen table at home or our office at home, whatever the deal is. But again, connection got disrupted in a way that we couldn't all control. And you've got all these things. Mental health before the pandemic wasn't that great. Like, the statistics were already trending in a not so great direction. Pandemic hits and it gets worse.
And I think we're still dealing with the hangover of that. I think that's really, that's kind of, as you're expressing those statements, we're still in the hangover of it. Still frustrated by the last 3 years and what it's meant and what it's done. They've studied it, right? It's been proven that it was one of the worst things for our mental health, right? Like you said, it was already bad, and now it just drove it right into the ground head first. So we have to all take it upon ourselves to take control of those items that we can and pull the nose up, man. It's time to get moving here. It's time to drag ourselves out of this loneliness, out of this dark place.
I think the word hangover having experienced a couple of hangovers in my day, you have two ways you can wake up with a hangover. You can stay in bed, stay in the dark, and not even try and crawl out. Or you can wake up, you can go get yourself a glass of water. You can eat some food, whatever it's going to be, but there are ways to get out of the hangover. You can take care of yourself is where I'm going with that. And I think this hangover, this pandemic hangover that we're in right now has lasted a lot longer than anybody expected. I think once everything got back to normal, we thought the hangover was going to be done. It's taken a long time. And so the only way to get out from the hangover is to take care of yourself. And it's the things we're talking about. It's the relationships, getting back in front of people, around people, the social aspect of it. It's taking care of yourself physically. And I'm going to go back to that for a second. There's a million reasons and excuses you can have for not taking care of yourself. Like, I'm too busy, I don't have the energy, all of that stuff. Like, you can make excuses all day long. You're going to pay the price for that. Like, you have the opportunity today to prepare for how your life is going to be 10 years down the road and 20 years down the road, but you're going to have to do some work, and it's going to suck. There are going to be days where you don't feel like it. You don't want to move. You don't want to exercise. You don't want to make the right choice as far as what you're going to eat. You're going to pay the price eventually. And that's not to say that I don't battle with that. You battle with it. I mean, you go out to a restaurant, you eat something crappy. That's fine. You have to figure out what you're going to make your norm. Like, is your norm going to be inactivity or activity?
Right. And just on the foods, on the restaurant thing for a second, right? I mean, sure. Nobody is denying go out and do that. What are you going to offset it with, right? And I also want to come back to just 1 second on the hangover side, right? So thinking about similar situations that I was in, summertime, home from college, go out Friday night, partied up with my friends. Of course, I was at my parents' house, and we had work to do. My dad had Saturday work scheduled for us to do. And I don't know, I probably got home at 4 a.m. And I think by 7:30, he was, kicking me out of bed. And I'm like, dude, I just got home. It's like, it doesn't matter. We got work to do today. I'm hungover. Terrible. And we start working. We were in the woods cutting wood. And I'm just feeling like crap. We take a break. We're sitting on the tailgate of the truck, and Dad reaches in the back of the truck and he grabs a gallon of water and he said, drink that, you'll feel better. So hydration and hard work. Guess what that taught me? Hydration and hard work cures a hangover. And it's still today is the recipe. Right? When we're feeling in that place of anxiety and loneliness, hard work and hydration gets you going down the path. Hard work solves it every time. Sweat that alcohol right out of you.
Well, and based on that story, you had somebody else there who saw you had a little bit of a hangover and helped you.
Well, I'm sure he experienced it himself at some point, right?
But he saw it and he goes, I know what he's going through right now. He needs some water. And I'm not going to let him off the hook with the hard work, because he needs the hard work too. Having people in your circle who will give you the gallon of water and say, drink this, you're going to feel better. That's huge.
Right. Yep.
You want to hit on relationships?
No. Relationships are hard, right? But I think if we enter into those relationships with, and you mentioned this earlier, right? What can I give to the relationship versus what can I get out of it? that piece becomes important. But I also think that as we change, relationships change, and we have to recognize that. And that's okay, right? I think there can be, and I've experienced this, frustration with change in relationships. But the reality is, it's okay. And once we realize that that's okay, that people are going to come and go, from our life, and sometimes it's for a period of time that relationship may get pushed to the side. Sometimes it's forever. But we just have to be comfortable with this change, in my opinion, of relationships. It's going to happen. People are going to come and go from our lives all the time, right? If we're at our age that we're at, and if we can say that we have a friend from high school or grade school that we're still friends with, if you have just one, that's pretty amazing.
I think to tag on to what you started that with, looking at the relationships we have with what we can give, and to come back to that for a second, I look at my relationship with Christina, and there have been times where my relationship with my wife was really selfish. Like I looked at my marriage and I'm like, what am I going to get out of this? And clearly it's a two-way street. You should be taking care of each other. You should be helping each other. That's the whole point of it. You're a team, right? But a really good teammate is focused on what they can bring the team, not what the team's going to give them. Like I grew up playing soccer, and my job on the team was to do a job for the team. And if I did that and everybody on the team did that, we all won. Like things just went smoother, right? We didn't win every game, but like if everybody was figuring out what they could bring to the team worked a lot better. And I look at like some of the close relationships I have, and I think one of the things that happens in close relationships is we take these people for granted. We take our wives, our kids, sometimes our business partners, like we take these people for granted. And then that little bit of selfish nugget comes out and we're like, well, what are they going to give me? Like, what am I going to get out of this versus what can I bring to the team? And I think that's a big focus. And it improves mental health when that's your go-to, is what can I bring? What can I give? How can I add value? That makes a big difference. And it makes relationships go smoother, because when I'm approaching it from a selfish perspective, it's easy to get pissed off. It's easy to end up down in a hole. It's easy to hit woe is me. And that tanks the mental health even worse, because now it's woe is me.
Yeah. And we build stories up too about certain scenarios or things that are going on. And I'm a firm believer in, you know what, let's just have the difficult conversation, right? Our relationship, sometimes we got to have the difficult conversation. It's not all, sunshine and rainbows, right? It's tough sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Have that dialogue. Be willing to be humble. Be willing to be vulnerable. Be willing to accept that conversation. My opinion is that will help with your mental health more than you realize.
Well, when you get vulnerable, it positions you to be humble. And when you're humble, it positions you to ask for help. As long as vulnerability is an interesting thing, because I think we're conditioned to think I need to be strong and I need to like shield myself. And as long as I'm focused on how strong I am, I'm never going to be focused on, hey, I could use a little bit of help, because I'm trying to keep this fake version of myself that's tough. I'm trying to keep that up. And when we can drop that, and you don't have to get vulnerable with everybody. I think that's the other piece of it. Like you got people in your circle that deserve that vulnerability from you and want to help you. And then there's other people that maybe you don't get quite as vulnerable with because you don't have that kind of relationship with them. But the people that you do have that close relationship with, to be able to get vulnerable and say, hey, I'm having a rough time right now, or I could use some help. Can you help me? If we got better at saying, hey, can you help me? Sometimes we think people can read our minds. Like, why don't they know I need help? Because you never freaking said it. You're so busy acting tough that I don't know if you need help or not. But if you humble yourself a little bit and you say, hey, I could use a hand here. Now all of a sudden the door opens and you can get help. You can have those conversations. So.
Absolutely.
How about number 5?
Job security. It's a tough one. A lot of challenges on that front. I understand. I've been through many of them over time. I've been part of rifts and downsizing in organizations. It's never fun. But I think one of the things we need to realize in those situations, it's not our fault. Right. And we have to get through that. You might have to spend a little bit of time in processing that to move beyond it. Right. And it's a real thing. I mean, I understand it's a real thing. Job security and what's happening and the economic climate and what businesses are doing, like, it's a real thing. I get that. And there's not a lot that we can control in that situation, but we can control the way we show up, and we can control the way we show up with our mind and our mindset. And if we're focusing on that, I think we can get through the job security piece, right? There's plenty of opportunities that exist today, and the way the workforce has operated in the past is changing, right? This gig workforce, this fractional workforce is becoming a real thing, and being able to look at what those opportunities are for you and how you can interact in those situations, can be somewhat exciting, I think.
I just talked to somebody the other day who had a job, a big corporate job. And after 10 years, no longer has that big corporate job. And it can be really easy to feel terrible about that. And as I was having the conversation, you used the word exciting, and it was a level of excitement. And when I was talking with this person, they said, I've been uncomfortable in this job for 10 years, and I've known it's not the right place for me, but it's comfortably uncomfortable. It's a good paycheck. It's good for my family. It's been fine. And there was something that happened when that one door closed, and all of a sudden there's a couple other doors that have opened. One of the challenges I see on the job side is it's really easy for us to get our identity from where we work, and to battle against that piece of that. Like, your identity is not where you work. My identity is not Orange Ball. Yours is not Octelliant. It's not even Grit Meets Growth. Like, we have identities outside of the things that we do that are way bigger than that. It's easy sometimes to get stuck in that. Like, I'm Orange Ball, and if Orange Ball's gone, who am I? You're still here. And there's something more at the core of who you are than the identity of where you work. So to double down on that, I think is big. And like you said, you can't control it. Like, anyone who thinks that they have complete job security and it's all under control, and that's not true. It never has been.
Yeah. You want to know where your true identity is? Look at the clubs or groups that you're part of, the volunteering that you do.
Mm-hmm.
That's who you are.
Absolutely. I would add to that, then not everyone's going to agree with this. I think faith comes in there. I think your family comes in there. I mean, your identity is a lot bigger than where you work. The thing that's interesting about the job security piece, we spend a lot of time at work. We spend a lot of our awake time at work. So it's really easy to get into the trap of, if the job security gets wobbly, I understand why mental health gets wobbly on top of that. If the job security is not there, because it's, for some of us, where we find our identity, it's where we spend a lot of our day. A lot of our friends are at work. We've got clients, like all of those things. If that rug gets ripped out from underneath us, things get a little janky. I don't want to discount that. I get that.
Right. But you can overcome it, right? Mm-hmm. there's a period of time where you have to process that. And having been through it and having had that rug ripped out from me in my career, the first time was tough. But you can get through it. Hydration, hard work.
Well, hydration, hard work. Like, it goes back to rewind this, re-listen to this whole thing. Control the controllables. You have a lot of things that are outside of your control in life that are going to impact your mental health. You also have a whole other list of things you can control. Double down on those. Put your energy on the things you can control. Focus on that and include some other people in that journey. Don't try and do this by yourself. That's a dangerous road to walk, and you don't need to do it by yourself.
Right on. Well, there we go. We've got through the 5 main challenges around mental health. You know what I realized out of this conversation today? Still work to be done. I still have work to do. And that's okay. Like I think I'm up for the challenge on that, right?
Same.
Like I mentioned earlier, right? A lot of like I'm on a evolution in my network of people, meeting a lot of new people over the last month, and it's been absolutely energizing. It's different conversations, it's different perspective from people. It's an opportunity for both of us to learn in those conversations. It's been actually a real joy. And it's probably the one thing that I can point to that's really helped me through some of these mental challenges over the last couple of months.
I would echo the same thing. Surrounding yourself with good people is one of the core things in this. Having good conversation is worth its weight in gold. And I think that's the challenge for the next week. Go find some good conversation. Find some people, find some good conversation, open that door. You'll be shocked what happens.
And you know the drill. Make it a great day and get after it.
Awesome conversation today, man. Thank you.
That wraps it up for today's episode. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for being part of the Grit Meets Growth tribe. And thanks for growing along with us and being part of this journey together. If you know someone who needs to hear the conversation we had today, please share it. If you got something out of this conversation, please leave us a review. And finally, if you want to make sure you don't miss future episodes, just remember to subscribe. We're thankful for each and every one of you. And as my co-host and good friend Chris Cathers always says, make it a great day.